Om. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet. Jai Gurudev. So we'll start from consciousness between two thoughts. Between two thoughts, everything is gone except consciousness. Yesterday we saw about the Sat Buddhi and the Asat Buddhi. And although everything does go between two thoughts, consciousness does not require everything to go in order to be. Consciousness is always there. Whatever comes, consciousness is. And if everything goes, consciousness is. There is only one thing that is Sat, and that is consciousness. It was said that the pot is mithya, asat, because the pot buddhi changes. Then it was said that when the pot is destroyed, the sat buddhi, the pot is buddhi, is also destroyed. Therefore, isn't your Sat Buddhi also a Sat? No, Shankara replies. Even when the pot is gone and the cloth is there, you see the Sat Buddhi in the cloth. Only the attribute has changed. Previously, the Sat Buddhi was conditioned by the pot, whereas now it is conditioned by the cloth. Again, an objection is raised. Even though one pot is gone, we may still have pot buddhi in some other pot. Is this other pot we recognize? In this other pot we recognize this is a pot. Since pot buddhi does not change, does this not prove that it is Sat? To the Shankara said that although pot buddhi may be seen in another pot, it is not seen in the cloth. Only in another pot can you have pot buddhi. In a piece of cloth, the only buddhi you have is cloth buddhi and not pot buddhi. Whereas the Sat buddhi is always there in the pot, in the cloth, in anything you see. And in anything you say is non existent. We say the man's horn does not exist. This does not mean there is no Sat buddhi here. When we say the horn is and the man is, it is Sat buddhi. To say man's horn is wrong, whereas to say man's horn is not is right. This latter expression indicates that man's horn is not, which is Sat buddhi. Therefore, Sat buddhi does not change in any way. Sat buddhi, which is the Sat of the Atma, the is of the I, is always there, even in deep sleep. That is why we want to experience sleep. If I were not there at all, I would not want to sleep. We find, however, that there is a universal interest in sleep because it is an experience and a very welcome one at that. Sat buddhi is also present in the dream. And Sat buddhi is also present in deep sleep. That is why we are able to say, I had a deep sleep. I slept well. Aham kimapi na janami sukhena maya nidra anubhuyata. That is what we say when we have a deep sleep. So that Sat buddhi, is what is able to recognize that I had a good sleep. Two orders of reality. Then Shankara deals with another problem that comes up. A pot is asat, and there is asat buddhi, which is really Atma consciousness. It is this Sat buddhi that joins the pot. How is this combination possible? Let me read this again. Then Shankara deals with another problem that comes up. A pot is asat and there is asat buddhi, which is really Atma consciousness. It is this Sat buddhi that joins the pot. How is this combination possible? Between two equally existent objects, there can be a combination. But how can there be a combination between Sat and Asat? You may see a reflected face in the mirror, but you cannot feed that person because there are two orders of reality involved. The spoon belongs to one order of reality and the reflection in the mirror to another. That is why the mouth in the reflected face even though it is open, cannot combine with the spoon. Similarly, then, if the Atma is the object of this Sat Buddhi, how can it go and join anything? To this, Shankara said that there was no problem. Sat can join anything. Mirage water in the desert makes you feel happy. But whether water is there or not, it is only Sat. Even if there is no water and you only imagine it to be there, you still say the water is. Here, the Sat Buddhi joins the mirage water, which is Asat. The is Buddhi, the Sat Buddhi, thus joins anything and everything. There is no rule that prevents Sat Buddhi and Asat Buddhi from joining because Sat is not opposed to anything. Everything being a superimposition upon the Sat. The Sat Buddhi lends itself to any type of object, such as an imagined pot or a real pot, a mistaken snake superimposed on a piece of rope or a real rope. Imagination is something different from mistake. If you are aware that you are imagining something, then it is imagination. Either way, an imagined pot is, snake is, even though it is later found to be a rope is. The Sat Buddhi joins in any and every situation. That object of the Sat Buddhi Vishaya, is Atma and is called Sat, for which non existence, abhava, is not there. Satah abhavaha na vidyate. So Sat can join with anything. Although they are two or different orders of reality, it is because all of the Asat is superimposed upon Sat. So whether it is a real object that we can perceive with our eyes or an imagined object, the Sat Buddhi always remains. Because everything is a superimposition upon the Sat. Anything that depends upon something else is Asat. If you look at your body, Deha, on that basis, it is Asat. Therefore, there is no cause for sorrow. It is the same with any thought. When we say thought is, that isness is consciousness, Atma. Consciousness is, and the thought is incidental to that consciousness. A thought is a nama rupa. A thought that has an outside object is called perception. If there is an object perceived outside sense perception, then it is inferential knowledge, imagination, or memory. Whatever it is, the thought is. It is nothing but consciousness conditioned by Nama Rupa. And if there is no Nama Rupa, then what is still consciousness. So the basis of everything is consciousness. So that isness is what prevails, what exists. And on top of that, everything else is happening. Everything else is superimposed upon it. Whether it is sleep, whether it is dream, whether it is deep sleep, and whether it is in the waking state, all the perceiving that we do with the five senses, the thoughts that come up in our mind, the vikalpas that come up, the imagination, the self talk, all of that that we do is a superimposition upon this substratum of isness. And they're all just nama rupa, and they keep changing. And they are dependent upon the isness for their existence, and therefore they're all asat, including the body and its equipment. And therefore there is no cause for sorrow. Sataha abhavaha na vidyate. Any repeat required, or anyone wants to share?
What does this line mean? Consciousness is, and the thought is incidental to that consciousness. What does it implies?
What remains is consciousness. A thought is like a wave. It is um, how do I say? It is like the ocean. If you consider the ocean as consciousness, a wave that arises is like a thought that arises in consciousness.
Okay.
It's only incidental. The wave is an incident, right? It is the wave is not the ocean. It
Yeah,
is not
I
apart
follow.
from the ocean, but it is dependent upon the ocean.
Right. Thank you.
It is because the consciousness is, the thought is. Therefore,
Okay.
that thought is incidental to consciousness.
Right.
And that is what we learned in Atma Bodh, no? It's consciousness that illumines everything. Just like how the sun illumines, whether or not the uh, objects exist, but they are all illumined by the sun. So similarly, consciousness,
Okay. No, no, you complete your sentence.
yeah. Maybe I'm not giving the actual.
No, no, I followed that thought, but I was just like some confusion was there. It's clear now, and basically, so whatever that consciousness we are talking about, it is because of that perception which may be in any form, right? Like
The
they have mentioned,
conscious, the thought,
it is.
yeah, go ahead.
No, no. It was just that that conscious, that perception can be by that they mentioned, no, inferential knowledge, imagination, memory. So
Mm-hmm.
that it is the way of perceiving that consciousness. In a way, we are perceiving that one, like we are experiencing that. That consciousness doesn't reveal itself. No, it's only when the thought is there, when you are in deep sleep, or you are maybe meditating, or your own memories, your past like impressions, or any inference we are drawing from something. That is where that consciousness plays. This is what I followed here. Yeah, continue, Dr.
Conscious
Ma.
doesn't change, right? It's the same consciousness is there always. But the perception, whatever we are getting through these kind of modes, from imagination or memory or whatever the inferential knowledge. That perception is nothing but consciousness, but it is conditioned by nama rupa, as they say. If there is no nama rupa, it's still that consciousness. The consciousness is the basis, uh, and that exists always. But then whatever we are seeing and the object that we are seeing, that is as a result of the previous memory, or like if you see the smoke, we think there's a fire. That's more like inferential knowledge. And the imagination, maybe you think the rope is there, but you think that it's a snake. So we are superimposing upon that consciousness all this impression, the perception that goes upon that consciousness uh, as these kind of objects, but they are not there all the time. So that's changing. So that become asat. So the asat, that's or destroyed or whatever, it's gone. But that the one
That
is,
isness remains. That
yeah, the
isness.
isness is remains. And also the one way he said, like a part buddhi becomes the next thing you see the cloth, and you become the cloth buddhi, and but then underlying that easiness is there always, like, but the impression is what we are getting on top of it. Like you mentioned about the ocean, the wave, the thought arises from that ocean. The thought itself, again, it's a asset. That's what I get from this. But the way they presented it, it sounded so complex. I hope we understood it correctly.
I was wondering, like, when every time that isness is there, then why are we so far away from that isness?
Huh? I'm sorry, what?
Like, I was just thinking, like, when everything is, every thought, every time that consciousness is there,
Mm-hmm.
but still we are away from that, is that I, that true I, that
Yeah,
that pure
because we are
consciousness.
relying on all the things that we're seeing mostly, right? The
Uh,
object, the changing,
you know,
and not
yeah.
realizing it is it. They are the inner self, uh, that we have to really see it to understand.
That is because of this lumping of the superimposition of all of the asat on the sat, and that
Yeah,
is all the play of Maya, which is
Maya.
why which is why we have to loosen. In order to loosen the grip Maya has on us, number one is exposure to this knowledge, and number two is to practice. The more and more we are under the grip of our raga dveshas, all our impressions, and the more we identify ourselves with this matter equipment, the more entangled we are with Maya. So with knowledge, slowly, little by little, this neti, we are removing one string after the other. We are untying that knot. And when that is completely untied, when your mind becomes pure and still, then what is just that consciousness. That is the state of enlightenment, of self-realization. It is actually the easiest thing. But apparently, it seems so difficult because we are so entangled in our misidentification.
Jai Gurudev, very beautiful. Yes, it is our Janmo Janam conditioning that it is that Adhyaropan happens, and but so beautifully Swamiji has brought out that we are all the time, it means we are all the time feeding in the mirror, isn't it?
Mhm.
And as though we are feeling like I'm feeding myself, I'm happy, I'm sad, but it is as good as feeding the mirror. And so beautifully that the between two thoughts, again, it reminded me of your beautiful sentence. Antare Antare Gopika Antare Madhava, right?
Madhava, Madhava, Antare. No,
Antare
Gopika, Gopika, Antare, Madhava.
Madhava. So it is the same thing, right? That between two thoughts, that pause where there is stillness. So there you can catch, and there it is. That easiness is right over there. So beautiful.
I think the vairagya is what is really important. I think that is what wavering all the time, that going and single pointedly, that concentrating on the Brahman. One thing, probably the easiest way is like they always say the bhakti yoga, right? When you do the bhakti towards one thing, one God that you really like, and that you keep doing it, and hopefully the things would change for good.
But since this is a matter of ignorance, no amount of doing will help. Doing, of course, will help in cleansing the equipment, cleansing the mind. Antakarana Shuddhi happens with doing. But ultimately, it is only with the sword of knowledge that this ignorance can be shattered.
That can be achieved by meditation only. Fully engrossed in meditation, absorbed, that will come slowly, slowly. That silence takes you into that deep silence, and you are absorbed into that. That is the state of, I think, enlightenment. You can say. So we might be having some for a few minutes or 2 seconds or 3 seconds or something like that. So as you practice, we have to increase that depth of meditation. Thank you.
So, going forward, and if there is no Nama Rupa, then what is still consciousness. Existence is consciousness. Therefore, Sat is always only Chit Atma. And the word Satya can only mean Chit. Self-existent consciousness alone can be Sat. Either word, Sat or Chit, will bring in the other word because what has to be Chit has to be Sat. and what has to be Sat has to be Chit. Thus, the Sat will bring in Chit and Chit will bring in Sat.
Jai Gurudev, what is Chit?
Yeah, Chit is existence. Sat is what is, and Chit is that knowledge principle.
I thought, oh yeah, right. Existence is the Sat, right? That Sat is the existence, Chit is the knowledge or consciousness.
So Satya can only mean Chit. Self-existent consciousness alone can be Sat.
Chat Chit Ananda, they say, right? Chat Chit Ananda.
See, Sat is the isness, no? Sat is that's what we've been seeing all along in the last few paragraphs. Sat is that isness, that which is in all the three states, in all the, that does not change.
Right, yeah. So that Bhava is also said, right? Sat is a anyway.
So either word Sat or Chit will bring in the other word, because what has to be Chit has to be Sat. We'll read further for us to understand better. Okay. Thus, the Sat will bring in Chit and Chit will bring in Sat. Because everything depends upon the Sat Chit. Sat Chit becomes limitless, Ananda, Ananta, Ananda. The word Ananta means limitless. I repeat this again, because everything depends upon the Sat Chit. Sat Chit becomes limitless, Ananta, Ananda. The word Ananta means limitless, and consciousness is Ananta. It is also said to be Ananda. People are always looking for Ananda. If everything depends upon Sat Chit, is there any limitation for Sat Chit Atma? There is no limit, because everything is Sat Chit Atma. Therefore, from the standpoint of the Sat Chit Atma, there is no distance between itself and everything else, nor is anything separate from it. In any cognition, the subject is Sat Chit Atma, the object is Sat Chit Atma, and the means of knowledge, the thought, vritti, is also Sat Chit Atma. All three are Sat Chit Atma alone. Thus, Sat Chit Ananda is the Swarupa of the Atma. Sat is not going to be non existent at any time, and Asat cannot be kept as it is, because it is constantly changing. Sat is the meaning, the content of the Sat Buddhi, and the content of the Asat Buddhi is name and form. When we say the pot is, the chair is, the table is, the man is, the woman is, the tree is, the is in all of them is the Sat Buddhi. That is common and is always qualified by the name and form called tree, pot, table, chair, and so on. Why do we say name and form? Because whatever you consider depends on something else, which depends on something else, and so on. Whenever we say something is, the is the basis, the satya, and the nama rupa is mithya, depending on this sat. The object Vishaya of the Sat Buddhi is Satya. Therefore, the amness in I am, Aham Asmi, the are-ness in you are, Tvam Asi, and the isness in He is, Saha Asti, and that is, Tad Asti, are all one and the same. The isness that each implies is the common basis for all things that exist. Therefore, it is the Karana, the cause for everything, and is called Satya. And the effect Karya is called Asat Mithya because it is dependent on the Karana for its existence. As mentioned earlier, Vedanta is nothing but a discussion of this cause and effect, Satya and Mithya, Karana Karyavada. Actually, Rinal's question of what is Chit is actually very good because what is described as Chit, I mean, it is not very clearly mentioned here, but maybe when we keep reading, we will, as by and by, we'll understand what that Chit principle is talked about. Sat is now very clear, isn't it? Sat is what is. Sat is the basis, just like how the ocean is the basis for the wave. That isness is limitless because that is what is, and everything else depends upon this. And therefore, anything that is dependent upon Sat becomes Asat.
In Atma Bodha, what we read Chit was consciousness. They have termed it as consciousness. What I remember, Chit is the consciousness.
So, isness is consciousness.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes. Isness is consciousness. That is what we read in the previous paragraph, no?
Right. So, existence is conscious. So, existence here is the isness, that Satya, and that is consciousness. So, he's all till now, the description was of explanation was of the is buddhi, the Sat buddhi. So that is now equated to consciousness, which is chit. And then it is also because it is the only one that exists and everything depends upon this, the Sat chit becomes limitless, Ananta. And consciousness is, it is also said to be Ananda because all, people are always looking for Ananda. Yeah, at this point, for us to understand how Ananda is part of, is a feature, is an attribute of, uh, or is the Swarupa of the Atma. I think we will have to revise Atma Bodh one more time. Such
The nature of the Atma, right? But being happy, bliss, the Ananda is.
Hari Om, it is like Swamiji already put that statement, no? It doesn't, Karya Karanavada, it doesn't require any instrument to make you happy. You are already.
Yeah, that's
Because
the
of the
nature of the Atma is,
yes,
by itself, it's eternally happy.
Very nice. Correct. So people are always looking for happiness, right? So, and like Bela said, the you don't need anything to be happy. So that consciousness which is Ananta, is also Ananda. And therefore, Sat Chit Ananda Adi is the Swarupa of this Atma.
Now I understand why Gurudev always tell it's an order that you have to be happy. I mean, by default, it is the system is like that, but we make it the way Swamiji beautifully said, I think, in the previous shloka about the sorrow, how we superimpose that on the big I, and we think that I am sad. When the happiness is by default our nature, which is limitless. The problem comes when we try to find that unlimited happiness from the limited instruments. Jai Gurudev.
Very beautiful. So the isness that each implies is the common basis for all things that exist. Therefore, it is the Karana, the cause for everything, and is called Satya. And the effect, Karya, is called Asat Mithya because it is dependent on the Karana for its existence. As mentioned earlier, Vedanta is nothing but a discussion of this cause and effect, Satya and Mithya, Karana Karya Vada. A product and its cause. In this connect, this Karana Karya Vada, there is a beautiful video that I came across yesterday, which I will share in the group. It is, I don't know his name, but I will share that later with you. A product and its cause. A product, a creation, a karya, a vikara is entirely dependent upon satya, that which is self-existent. If satya itself depended upon something else, it would not be satya. The self-existent satya is called karana, cause. Depending on what it is you want to prove, karana can also be said to be satya. Yat karanam tat satyam. That which is a cause is said to be satya because it is a cause, like clay with reference to a pot. Because clay is the cause for the pot, it is satya. But only for the pot. Please understand. Another example is thread as the cause or satya for the cloth. Thus, from these two examples, we see that satya is karana and karana is satya. With reference to a product, a creation, we are going to prove something. In Shankara's Bhashya on this verse, he says that a product is mithya. Yat karyam tat mithya. Mithya means asat, the word used in the current verse. These kinds of statements reflect a style that we will be coming across later. A product is mithya because it is dependent upon a cause, as is the case for cloth. Whereas Sat is not dependent upon anything else and undergoes no change whatsoever. Satah abhavaha na vidyate. Because the object of Sat Buddhi is Sat and the object of Asat Buddhi is Asat, we have the Sat Buddhi at all times. The Asat Buddhi depends upon the Sat Buddhi. The object of the Asat Buddhi, the pot, depends upon the object of Sat Buddhi, clay, which itself depends upon something else. When you say clay is, the clay depends upon another Sat Buddhi, atoms. When you say the atom is, the atom depends upon particles, which depend upon a concept. When you say a concept is, the concept depends upon the witness of the concept, Sakshi, which is consciousness. And when you say consciousness is, what does it depend upon? It does not depend upon another consciousness because it is Swataha Siddha, self-existent. Therefore, nothing can be Satya except that which is self-existent. This is all that is being said here. That which is self-existent is Atma, and that alone is Satya. Everything else being dependent upon Satya is Asat. For the Satya Atma, there is no non-existence, Abhava, whereas for the Asat, there is no real existence. The experience of seeing objects is there, but these objects are all in the transactional world, Vyavahara, and therefore have only an empirical reality. About these two, Sat and Asat, a final understanding, an ascertained conclusion, the ultimate knowledge is arrived at by the seers of the truth of Brahman. Tattva-darshibihi anayoho ubhayoho api antahatu drishtaha. The Tattva-darshi is the one who is capable of seeing the truth, Tattva of everything. Tattva is the abstract form of the pronoun tat. The pronoun tat means that and can stand for anything from apple to zebra, as indicated by the word in Sanskrit for pronoun, sarvanama, meaning the name for everything. Therefore, the word tattva means the truth, the intrinsic nature of a thing, anything. Shankara further explains its meaning by saying, because all that is here is only Brahman, the name for that Brahman is Tat. The abstract noun of Tat, Tattva, means the truth, the Swarupa of Brahman. I will repeat all of this one more time. So, Tattva is Tasya Bhavaha Tattvam. The nature of a thing is called Tattva. And Tat iti Sarvanama. Sarvam cha Brahma. Tasya nama Tat iti. Tad Bhavaha Tattvam. Brahmanaha Yathatvam. Brahmanaha Yathatmyam. Yathatmyam. Tat is the name for everything. That is, it includes everything. This is because Brahman is everything and it is called Tat here. The nature of this Tat, that is Brahman, is called Tattva, the true nature of Brahman. Here Shankara uses the etymological meaning of the word Sarvanama to his advantage to define Brahman. Here the word Sarvanama is not a pronoun. So here Tat, here it's not just the grammatical Sarvanama pronoun. It means Brahman. It is the nature of Brahman. Mithya must be understood as Mithya and Satya as Satya. Only then does everything fall into its own place. Satya does not elicit any sorrow, and Mithya does not have the status to cause sorrow. If there is sorrow, it is Mithya. So I'll just read this part one more time. The truth of Brahman. or even before that. A product and its cause. A product, a creation, a karya, a vikara is entirely dependent upon satya, that which is self-existent. If satya itself depended upon something else, it would not be satya. The self-existent satya is called karana, cause. Depending on what it is you want to prove, karana can also be said to be satya. Yat karanam, tat satyam. That which is a cause is said to be satya because it is a cause, like clay with reference to a pot. Because clay is the cause for the pot, it is satya, but only for the pot. Please understand. Another example is thread as the cause or satya for the cloth. Thus, from these two examples, we see that satya is karana and karana is satya. With reference to a product, a creation, we are going to prove something. In Shankara's Bhashya on this verse, he says that a product is mithya. Yat karyam tat mithya. Mithya means asat, the word used in the current verse. These kinds of statements reflect a style that we will be coming across later. A product is mithya because it is dependent upon a cause, as is the case for cloth, whereas sat is not dependent upon anything else and undergoes no change whatsoever. Satah abhavaha na vidyate. So it is on the unchanging sat. It's a wonder how the changing asat starts dancing. And that is the whole creation. The nama rupa, that is dancing on the asti, bhati and priti. Sat chit ananda. Because the object of sat buddhi is sat and the object of asat buddhi is asat, we have the sat buddhi at all times. I think we will stop here. And tomorrow we'll continue this one more time. We'll read this again. So, the meaning of that tat is Brahman, Sarvanama. And how existence is consciousness. Sat is Chit and Chit is Sat. And it is also Ananta and therefore Ananda. And this is the Swarupa of Atma. Sat Chit Ananda. So we'll stop here today. Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat Shri Krishnarpanamastu.
Meditation is accepting this moment, living every moment totally with depth. Let us keep our spine erect and body relaxed and eyes closed. Relax your shoulders. Keep a big smile on your face. You're sitting like the statue of Buddha, very serene and with a serene smile on your face. Relax your body. Let's take a deep breath in and breathe out. Become aware of your chest region, throat and chest region. If you notice some tension in the body, just let it be. Except those parts of the body where you feel a tension, the other parts are in comfort. Other parts are at peace. Become aware of that also. There are many good things about you and inside of you. Acknowledge them. They will never leave you. And the negative aspect you may see in you is never going to stay with you forever. They are all guests for some time. Let them be. Sit with the total acceptance of yourself the way you are at this very moment. Total acceptance of what is now here. Lead us to deeper meditation. Let go of all the efforts. Om Shanti Shanti. Shanti. Let go of all your effort and be in this emptiness. And slowly and gradually become aware of body and surroundings. And you may gently open your